thanks to the organizers for inviting me, and thanks to all of you for being here. It's real nice to see that so many people are interested in this area, and for me as a biotechnology entrepreneur, it's really nice to be here in Holland, which is very much, if not the cradle, at least the epicenter of industrial biotechnology, at least in Europe. And industrial biotechnology is exactly what we at Bioextrax are doing. We're a Sweden-based startup that was originally spun out of the Department of Biotechnology at Lund University. And well, while we sometimes struggle to find the right competences for our recruitment needs, there seems to be a microbiologist under every stone here in Holland. So what then is a microbiologist doing at a denim event, you might be asking yourself. And the purpose for me to be here today is, well, first of all, to maybe inspire you about a bit about the potential of using microbiology or bacteria, which is our tool, to solve some of the sustainability challenges that the fashion industry in general and the denim industry in particular are facing. And I'm not going to go into the details about what these are. They've been covered. They will probably be covered a lot, both today and tomorrow and during the rest of this week, and I'm probably the least qualified person in this room to talk about it, but we all know it relates to water consumption, it relates to usage of chemicals, it relates to competition with food sources for land, and of course if you use fossil-based materials in your textiles, you have problem around CO2 emission and about pollution of the environment after usage. So while I'm not qualified really to talk about that, I consider myself at least pretty qualified to talk about the potential solution that we have. And as indicated earlier, it revolves around the usage of bacteria. And using bacteria, we can produce two materials that when combined can create a sustainable textile material. And when I say sustainable, I mean that both from an environmental and from a performance perspective. And these two materials that we produce using bacteria are feather microfibers. These are derived from feathers, so feathers from turkeys or from chickens or from post-consumer feathers in pillows or duvets. Welcome. And the second material that we use is a bioplastic called PHA, or polyhydroxyalkanoates. That's the last time I'll say that today. So I'll start by talking a bit about the feather microfibers and how we produce them. And as you can probably imagine, our increasing taste for chicken and turkey meat leads to increasing amounts of feathers being produced. And the vast majority of these 5 million tons, that's 5 million tons, that's a lot, of feathers that is being produced every year on a global scale is currently being thrown away. And that's a terrible waste, considering that feathers are almost completely made up of keratin. Now, keratin is an excellent material. It's biodegradable, it's flexible, and it's very strong, just to name a few of the benefits. Now, a feather looks something like this if you zoom in well enough. And they are made up of millions of these micrometer-sized fibers that are connected with what we can call a protein glue, if we so will. And what we do is that we take feathers and we add bacteria to the batch. And what our bacteria are doing is that they consume only this protein glue that I called it. And if you break down or dissolve the glue that brings two pieces together, well, then you release them, and that means that you can use it for something else. And these microfibers that we produce are between 30 and 150 micrometers long and between 2 and 6 micrometers wide. And an important aspect is that they are hollow, which you can more or less see here. And the hollowness means that they have a low density, which means that any product produced with these fibers will have or will be lightweight, which is important for some applications. This is what it looks like. We take raw feathers that can be straight from the slaughterhouse. It can be from recycling stations of feathers, as I mentioned, that could be in duvets or pillows and so on. We mix them with our bacteria that uses the feather as a feed. So it grows on these feathers. And after around 24 hours, we get this mix of a nutrient-rich soup with these fibers. Now, I did mention the small size, between 30 and 150 micrometers. If you're in the fiber industry, you will know that that is very short, and in particular, it's too short to spin with traditional methods. You can use electrospinning, but that's too expensive for most applications. Now, this is not a problem if you use it as a reinforcement into plastics, for instance, but if you want to turn it into a textile material, you have a problem. And that's where the second material comes in. We mix these fibers with PHA. I almost said polyhydroxyalkanoates again, even though I promised not to do that. So PHAs is a bio-based and biodegradable plastic, or a plastic replacement, you can call it, that is produced by bacteria. And the process for producing them is pretty simple, so I'll go through it briefly. You take any kind of carbon source, which means any kind of organic material. It can be molasses from the sugar industry, it can be municipal wastewater or toilet water, it can be organic household waste, and so on. You grow bacteria on this carbon source. The bacteria feeds on the carbon in this batch, and after a while you cut the access to certain nutrients, such as nitrogen. And what the bacteria then start to do is that they start to take the carbon around them and they synthesize it in the form of polymers intercellularly. So inside the cells, they build up these polymers, and the reason why they do that is that they, in the future, when the nitrogen comes back, they can use this as a carbon source. Now, this is not very unlike how we as humans start accumulating energy in the form of fat when there is a lot of sugars around. So it looks, it looks something like this. This is a bacteria, and it's filled with polymers. So then you need a step or a method to get the polymers out of the bacteria. And what we do then is that we add a second bacteria. You can call that the Bioextrax bacteria. And what this bacteria is doing is that it consumes the cell walls, so the walls of the PHA-producing bacteria. And out on the other side, you get two products. One is the hydrolyzed or broken down, the dissolved cell walls. This can be sold as a food product for animals or for humans. It's a product called hydrolyzed single-cell protein. And then we get the main product, which is the PHA, the polymer. Now, this is a great polymer with a wide range of properties, and from a purely performance perspective, it can replace 70% of all the plastics that are being used today. And before I continue, I want to say something about this term biodegradability. And Andrew, we discussed briefly yesterday what the definition of biodegradability is. Do you remember what it was? Oh, you do? Okay, you don't want to say. So it is that microbes can break it down, can break a material down without releasing any toxins. Now, if you remember what this polymer is, it is produced by bacteria in order for themselves to break it down in the future. So it is designed by nature to be biodegradable. It is per definition biodegradable. So what we have is a plastic or a plastic replacement that is produced by bacteria. It can replace 70% of all fossil-based plastic, and it is per definition biodegradable. So I wonder who here have heard about PHA before my presentation? 10 people out of how many are we? 200? 150? That's okay. I actually tend to get worse results, but I want you kind of to remember, or to the rest of you to remember, where you heard about PHA first. Because when we get the price down enough, which we're pretty close to achieving, this will revolutionize at least the plastic world. I promise you that. So, if you combine these two materials, the keratin microfibers that are derived from feathers and the PHA, you get something that we call keratinoplast. It's not the catchiest term. We're microbiologists, we're not marketing experts, so sorry about that. Any suggestions are very welcome. But this material is, or should be, we believe, very interesting for the textile industry. It is bio-based, it's produced by waste materials that are currently being thrown away or goes to landfills. It is biodegradable, and we can control the level of biodegradability. It also is sound absorbing, it has good barrier properties, it is strong, and it is lightweight, and importantly, it's possible to spin it into textiles. Now, why don't we all wear this material? Well, the reason is that our current product doesn't look like that, it looks like this. And the reason, again, is that we are microbiologists. We don't have expertise in production and spinning of textiles, and that is the reason why we're here today, to see if there is anyone who is interested in exploring this material for various textile applications. So you're more than welcome to get in touch if you're interested in discussing that. Thanks a lot.
It's kind of amazing technology, actually. Feathers. Any questions for Edvard? Please, Michael. Is there a mic for Mike? That's funny, right? Mic for Mike.
One of the reasons why PLA, which was one of the first attempts to get this type of product into the market, one of the reasons PLA has failed to get in is because, one, the melting point was too low. Two, it was very difficult to dye. And still today, after 10 years, they haven't really cracked that. And three, when you say it's biodegradable, PLA takes absolutely years to break down, so I would suggest that that's not really the definition of biodegradable.
So, I mean, PLA is biodegradable, but the problem is that you need an industrial compost in order to achieve biodegradability. So for ones who are not in the polymer field, PLA is kind of the evil big brother of PHA, which is our product. It has been on the market for quite some years, but it comes with a lot of issues, as you mentioned. The main thing from an environmental perspective is that it doesn't, if you throw it into nature, it doesn't degrade. PHA is a completely different type of material. It degrades quicker than wood, for instance, and importantly doesn't release any toxins. So from that perspective, it's completely different. From a textile manufacturing perspective, this is the reason why I'm here. I need to explore these things. Dyeing of PHA is possible, and it's fairly simple. If the melting temperature is the right one, I don't know. I'm all ears. But we're working with the Textile University in Borås in Sweden, and they have been able to produce, to compound it and do filaments that then can be spun into textiles. So it seems like it works from that perspective, but yeah, that's why I'm here.
Anybody else? And if you have names of... Oh, go ahead.
What's the biodegradation time?
So there is no...
And condition.
And condition. So it degrades these questions always come up. But it's a good discussion. So degradation, and as you say, kind of everything biodegrades almost sooner or later, or at least everything degrades. So it depends on the environment you have. So if you have a lot of oxygen, you have a lot of heat, and you have a lot of bacteria, well, then it will degrade in weeks. If you would put it on the bottom of the oceans where there is no oxygen and there is very few bacteria, then it would take longer. So there are a few standard tests that can be made. There is a big Belgian company that I can't remember the name of, Vigret, I think. PHA is approved to be both marine and land biodegradable by that certification body. But it's not a binary term.
Good. Anybody else? And again, if anybody has a spinning company that they want to recommend to Edward, you can contact him or me or anybody here. Go ahead, more.
One more question. So, one of the benefits of polyester and polyamide diet with UV lighters, right? So is this going to be able to take in the property of being able to use like waterless dyeing properties?
We haven't tried it. It should, if you can do it with polyester, it should work with this material as well, because you can compound it in a way so it almost one-to-one mimics the properties of polyester. But we haven't tried it.
Is it going to have the same sort of...
Hold on. I'll give you my mic because everybody wants to hear your questions.
Nobody wants to hear me talk. Does it have hydrophobic properties similar to polyester, yes, or is it hydrophilic?
Yeah, especially the fibers are hydrophobic. You can throw water on geese, I think is the expression, right? So it is hydrophobic in itself, the fibers. So it's adding to the hydrophobicity of that the PHA plastic already has. So yes, it's highly hydrophobic, which I guess is bad news for dyeing, maybe.
That's why I'm curious about that waterless dyeing methods. But what about in regards to the interaction with human skin and the heat that comes out of it, like say in exercise?
Yeah, it doesn't start to degrade. So you can control the level of biodegradability. And of course, if you produce shoes, you kind of want a very low level of biodegradability. Whereas if you produce maybe a jacket, you can accept higher levels. But yeah, it won't start to biodegrade on you. And I guess as a comment on that is that it doesn't release any toxins whatsoever when it degrades. So there are, for instance, we have produced chewing gum from this material. So it's it's perfectly safe for human beings and animals.
Awesome. I'm going to ask a lot more questions later, but I'm going to stop now.
Yeah, thank you.